Army General Keith Alexander, who's the head of the NSA. He's at a hearing, but don't get it wrong. It's not like it's going to be confrontational. You know, you hear that, you see in the movies, they go to the House or the Senate, and the senators are like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And it's challenging. No. This is in the House, and the name of the hearing is called, quote, "How Disclosed NSA Programs Protect Americans and Why Disclosure Aids Our Adversaries." That's the name of the hearing. That's the name of the hearing.
Do you think that they're headed in a certain direction with this?
I can't quite tell. I don't know. Are they going to be pro-director of the NSA or challenging? And maybe do some supervision, you know, checks and balances.
This is the checks and balances we've heard so much about.
Now, remember, Keith Alexander went in front of this the House last week. And so what did he say back then? Pay close attention to the numbers, okay?
I gave an approximate number to them in a classified, but it's dozens of terrorist events that these have helped prevent.
Okay, so I'm sorry, that was the Senator, of course, last week. Now he's in the House today. And so he says, dozens? Okay, now we talked about it at the time, and he really couldn't prove any of them, right?
Right.
But this time around, when he went to the House, they said, no, he's going to be a lot more specific. And first of all, notice the number going up. Let's watch.
In recent years, these programs, together with other intelligence, have protected the U.S. and our allies from terrorist threats across the globe, to include helping prevent the potential terrorist events over 50 times since 9/11.
So all of a sudden it's 50. It was kind of
over 50.
Now it's over 50.
It's over 50.
Before it was dozens, which is nice and vague. It could be 50, it could be, but if it was 50, he probably would have said the higher number instead of saying dozens. Now all of a sudden it is the higher number. Next week it'll probably be 100.
And he also said, you know, this has protected us and our allies. Now, so he's broadening the scope of just how valuable this program is.
That's exactly right. And my God, the amount of attacks we stopped in Norway is legion.
Well, I mean, you know, it seems to me that there is an obligation, at the very least, that we should have senators and Congress people come out and say, we have a list of 35 or 50 or over 50 events that have been very explicitly shown to us that could not have been stopped but for this program.
And now, remember last week we shared this quote with you guys. The fact is, it's the exact opposite. Senator Wyden and Senator Udall, after Keith Alexander testified in the Senate, came out and said, that is not, to the best of our knowledge, that is not true. We have, and they're on the Intelligence Committee, we have never seen any evidence that any attack was stopped using these programs.
And he doesn't say attack, he says events. And now, I know this is
like they were going to do a birthday party and we put an end to that.
I mean, well, you know, look, I'm being, you know, I'm parsing here a little bit, but
that's what they do.
These guys are very careful about the words they choose. Terrorist events is not exactly colloquial. I mean, this is a chosen word because it is far broader than terrorist attack.
That's a great point. So now the other thing he was supposed to do in this hearing is give us some details. That's what was promised. The Associated Press succinctly explains, quote, he provided few additional details. Okay, so what did he do? He went back to the cases that he already talked about. One was Zazi, right? So this guy who was going to do the subway bombings in New York and he was stopped. We already know that Zazi in reality was stopped because he had emailed a guy who we knew was a known terrorist because we had captured a laptop. So it was standard intelligence work, had nothing to do with the computer going, doot, 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 doot. I have found Zazi, you know, based on his patterns of emails and phone calls. No, he sent an email to a guy we were tracking, and we were tracking him because we had the laptop with his name on it. That's called intelligence work. That's what we used to do. That's the right way to do intelligence, right? So President Obama, when talking to Charlie Rose, tried to justify the Zazi thing, and he said this: we might have caught him some other way. We might have disrupted it because a New York cop saw he was suspicious. Maybe he turned out to be incompetent and the bomb didn't go off. In other words, he's not even denying that that they didn't catch him using PRISM or anything else.
Here's the thing, you know, he goes on to say, but what we're doing is we're closing the margins here.
In fact, let me give that quote and then let you talk about it. He said, but at the margins, We are increasing our chance of preventing a catastrophe like that through these programs.
Well, you know, like I said at the top of the show, there's another great thing that you could do. You could just say, you know, we're going to put, everybody's going to walk around with a bracelet that records everything you say, or we're going to put it in everybody's house, but we don't do that. At one point, the point is that, and I accept the idea that we need to do some spying. I accept the idea that there needs to be some surveillance. I accept that there needs to be this apparatus. But the point is that you cannot have this apparatus dictated by secret law where there is no opportunity for anyone to argue against it, to advocate against it. This is very problematic. It is wholly undemocratic. For those people who think it's very liberal to have secret law and to have an apparatus that is done with absolutely with no transparency, that's just patently absurd. These are things that should be debated out in the open. And when we are prosecuting or saying that this reporter we could prosecute for espionage for digging around in this stuff, that we have passed the line.
All right, now let me skip ahead to Mike Rogers and how the committee perceived Alexander, right? Now, this is a point where they can say, hey, wait a minute now. I just saw you say dozens a lower number last week. Now it's a higher number.
Are we
right?
going to see a clip of a pedicure?
Okay, we're not, but they almost. I'm going ahead to graphic 23 here. The Associated Press explains, Representative Mike Rogers, Republican of Michigan, chairman of the committee, and Representative C.A. Dutch Ruppelsberger of Maryland, now he's a Democrat, the panel's top Democrat, said the programs were vital to the intelligence community and assailed Snowden's actions as criminal. Okay, so it turns out they didn't challenge the witness in front of them who has a history of lying to that same committee. Instead, they challenged the guy who leaked information that let us know the truth about what that guy was doing. Now, if you're not sure that he's been lying all along, Alexander, well, we had 4 different videos that Forbes magazine had put up of Alexander telling clear lies before the program, saying, oh, we don't collect data of millions of Americans. JR put it together in a compilation. Let's watch.
Is the NSA have the ability to listen to Americans' phone calls or read their emails under these 2 programs?
No, we do not have that authority.
Does the NSA routinely intercept American citizens' emails?
No.
Does the technology exist at the NSA to flip a switch by some analyst to listen to Americans' phone calls or read their emails?
No.
Does the NSA intercept Americans' cell phone conversations?
No.
So the technology does not exist for any individual or group of individuals at the NSA to flip a switch to listen to Americans' phone calls or read their emails.
That is correct.
Google searches?
No. I assume by your question that those emails are in the United States.
Correct.
NSA does not have the ability to do that in the United States.
Text messages?
No. Are we gathering all the information on the United States? No, that is not correct.
I see, but you do have the capability of doing
but not in the United States.
Not without a warrant.
No. We don't have the technical insights in the United States. In other words, you have to have something to intercept or some way of doing that, either by going to a service provider with a warrant or you have to be collecting in that area. We're not authorized to collect, nor do we have the equipment in the United States to actually collect that kind of information.
Amazon.com orders?
No.
Does the NSA have the technological capacity to identify those Cheney bashers based upon the content of their emails? Yes or no?
No.
Bank records?
No.
Okay, now, of course, Amazon, Google were exactly the people that we were getting the information from. Here's the really interesting part. He said the technology does not exist for us to be able to either check the emails or listen in on the phone calls. That's totally 100% a lie. And we now know that it's a lie with certainty, and the government has basically admitted that they didn't say, they're not saying Alexander lied, but they're saying, yes, we do have that capacity, we do have that ability. He said over and over, we don't have that ability. And by the way, we also know as a fact that the government captures about 3 billion pieces of data inside the United States every single month. Now, it captures 100 billion outside the United States, but this is the content of our emails and our web searches. 3 billion a month. Here, he's saying, no, we don't. We couldn't even do that.
And you know, it was interesting because some of his early answers, he would shift from, well, we don't have, do you have the ability to do this? We don't have the authority to do that. You know, he shifts those terms in some respects, but then he basically just goes full on the full Monty with, we don't even have the technology to do it. We don't have the ability to do it. I mean, he goes on to say, yeah, do we have the technology to flip a switch? No.
That's just not true.
Well, I mean, okay, we may not have a switch that we flip, maybe a button that we press. I mean, these are the way that these guys operate.
And yesterday on the show, I talked about how at one point they justified acquiring the information by saying, we're not acquiring it, we're obtaining it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So now
It's coming to us. The point is, it's a passive thing.
Totally.
It's just showing up in some fashion.
Right. Now, faced with this guy who seems to have perjured himself, which is a very significant criminal issue, right? I mean, this is the thing that Republicans wanted to impeach Bill Clinton on.
I understand they actually did. They didn't convict him in the Senate, but I believe they did impeach him.
I believe they did, right? You should look that up. So, faced with that, what does Republican Mike Rogers, who I'm sure was incensed by Clinton, say instead? Once again, he directs his ire at not the NSA, not the perjurer sitting in front of him, but elsewhere. He says, it is at times like these where our enemies within become almost as damaging as our enemies on the outside. Now, if you didn't think that it was beginning to be a police state, well, that quote just about cinches it for you. When you start talking about enemies within and how we must surveil them, well, we got trouble.